Hi, and welcome back to the Mind of the Writer. So if you're following me this summer, you'll know that I am looking at 4 concepts and hopefully weaving them all together later in the summer in August to come up with some theories on what is going on in the writer's mind when it comes to creating passionate on-page relationships and love stories and love scenes. So previous to this video, we dealt with Hierith and Limerence. This video, Muses. Next video, The Art of Desire. And then I'm actually going to add a 5th concept, which I'll tell you about at the end of this video. So today we're going to deal with muses. And just like with limerence, muses is a little bit, or at least the concept is a little bit more intricate. So I am going to refer to some notes during the video. And when it comes to pronouncing the names of the original 9 muses, it is a bear with me situation because those names are fairly difficult. I listened to them online, I practiced, but I'm not sure that I have them correct. Anyway. Okay, so originally the 9 muses were the 9 daughters of Zeus. This is in Greek mythology, and Mnemosyne. I think I have that right. And Mnemosyne was the goddess of memory. So the 9 muses are number 1, Calliope. She's the muse of poetry, music, song, dance, and eloquence. Muse number 2 is Clio, and she's the muse of history. Then we have Euterpe, the muse of lyrical song. Then Melpomene, the muse of tragedy. Next, Terpsichore, so that's a difficult one, the muse of dance. Then Erato, the muse of erotic poetry. Polymnia, the muse of sacred song. Urania, the muse of astronomy, and Thalia, the muse of comedy and bucolic poetry, bucolic meaning pastoral or of the country. So those are the 9 original muses, daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne. However, over the centuries, the definition of a muse has evolved into something very general, and that is a person or a figure or an entity that inspires an artist to create. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a romantic way, but it is a person or a figure that inspires the creation of art. So that's very, very general, but that's what it's evolved into. So if you look at the modern idea of what a muse is, well then of course you can have all sorts of muses because it's such a general definition. A muse could certainly be a spouse, it could be a lover, it could be someone that you've lost through death, it could be a limerent object or someone that you desire but you know that you're never going to have. It could be a ghost, it could be a spiritual entity, because the idea of a muse is just so broad, it could encompass anything. So I thought I'd give you a few different examples of muses with some artists that you've probably heard of before. So Pablo Neruda, the Spanish painter, was known for having physical, so real-life love affairs with some of the women that were in his paintings and that inspired his paintings. But the thing with Pablo Neruda is that when he came to finish a piece of art, the love affair that he had been having with the subject of his painting usually ended and dissolved. So that's very interesting. He's having a physical relationship with the muse, but once that piece of art is done, then the relationship ends. John Lennon said that, Yoko Ono was his muse. So in that case, you have a spouse that is a muse, and also a very interesting relationship, because I would say, and this is my opinion, doesn't mean it's going to be everyone's, that in a way, John and Yoko made their relationship art. Their marriage was art in and of itself, and the lines were blurred. So there you have a spouse that is a muse. I think of the character Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice. So this is a figure that doesn't exist in the, like, let's say in real life, but then what is real life? Because he exists on the page, he exists on film, he exists on thousands and thousands of imaginations. But I know in my Spanish business, there were several times where a woman student was in my class, or a female student, and these are different people, but they were really besotted with the character Mr. Darcy. And the creator of Bridget Jones' Diary has said that, that the Colin Firth character, especially in the scene where Colin Firth comes out of the pond and his shirt is dripping and he's soaking wet, that Mr. Darcy inspired that. So there you have an example as of a character as a muse. So those are three separate examples: a real life lover, a spouse, and a character as being muses. There is an individual in Los Angeles, and I'm going to link her article below. And in my opinion, this individual is very exceptional, and her name is Robin Frederick. And Robin Frederick is a songwriter, she's an author, she's an executive producer, she's got a wonderful website on art and music and things like that, and she has written this great article on muses. And she details different kinds of muses in her article as well. But the one thing that I'm really interested, or I think that she articulates so well, is a particular kind of muse called the unattainable other. And when I read her description of the unattainable other, it's very, very similar to the limerent object. So I do have a quotation, which I'm going to refer to now from that article, but just remember that I am going to link the article below. So she says, you have the muse, it can often be the unattainable other. And this is when the writer can, and this is where her quotation begins, yearn, reach for, worship, but never actually possess the muse. In my own words, paraphrasing, she says that artists who live with a muse, and so they're fantasizing somebody that they're actually living with, they often discover that he, she, or they have a companion. And when they discover that, the muse then becomes a real person and begins to lose their shine. So that's me paraphrasing, but you can read what she says in that article. She says that muses are viewed better from a distance. When I read that, I really think of the limerent object. There's so many similarities there. I think that when you consider that there are so many kind of muses for so many different kinds of artists, and many of those artists are excellent, in a way, I don't think it matters what kind of muse is inspiring the artist. I think the most important thing is that the muse, no matter what it is or who it is actually doing its job in the mind of the writer, so that the writer can create the best characters and the best scenarios possible creatively. So I don't think that's the important question. And of course, when in August, when I develop these theories further, I'll probably come up with, more intricate ideas. The question that interests me, though, and I have to look at my notes here because it is a little tricky, is if we accept life as this rich, multifaceted experience, and spirituality and the non-physical realm is such an important part of that multifaceted experience. And that's something that not everyone acknowledges. I think you can tell by now I definitely do. Well, then there are so many other kinds of real than physical. So my question is that the creator with the muse, by the very act of artifying the muse, is that writer not making the muse real in all those other realms other than physical. And not only that, is the writer not making that muse transferable and real in all the non-physical ways for all the readers. So this idea of the unattainable other, or in limerence we can say the limerent object, is the artist who is elevating them or inspired by them, not making them real and attainable in all those other ways other than physical. So that's something that I'm definitely going to look at further when I come up with my more intricate theories a little later. The fifth thing that I'm going to add to this preliminary, sort of set of videos is the idea of mystique. Because next week we're going to be looking at the art of longing. And again, that's looking at distance, creating desire, or I say the art of desire, but the idea that distance and I guess just the idea of distance and separation, creating desire and creating inspiration. Because I'm really interested in reader-writer relationships, I'm very interested in sort of taking a little bit of a sidestep and asking the question, does there need to be mystique around the writer? Can a writer be musable for the reader? Because I would say, and again, it's just a gentle suggestion, that if the reader knows too much about the writer, too many details about the writer's personal life, too many things about the writer's daily activities, if the writer is too flesh and bone, that may take the shine off the magic of the story. It could get in the way of that energy around the story. And the story in itself, you want the story to have power. And if the reader knows where all the little things came from to inspire the story, all the real life things, it might take away from that, from the story. And if we're talking about love relationships on page, it might take away from that. So that's something that I'm going to look at once we've done the art of longing next week. So thank you for listening. And I will be back next week to talk about the art of desire, then mystique, and then hopefully I'll be able to work these into, I don't want to say complicated, but a comprehensive theory of what's going on in the mind of the writer when it comes to love stories and love scenes. So we'll see you next week on The Mind of the Writer. Thank you.